How are you?
I'm very good, Deborah. How are you doing today?
I'm great. You must be incredibly busy and this environment. How would you compare this environment to some of the other challenging environments we've been in, and how is your relationship with your clients continuing to adjust?
Yeah, I mean, every crisis in the world is different from 9/11 to 2008, 2009, and is a whole separate dynamic. But this is the first one that really that came out of the blue that forced everybody to go in a different direction completely than what we anticipated on in the most drastic of ways. And so changing behaviors, changing how we work, changing how we rely on people. You know, we have an industry that's really in supply chain that's based upon checking the checkers. And
Yeah.
we can't do as much of that anymore just because you can't waste money and time and people on rechecking things. You have to really have a trust relationship. So I say the validation of trust, or the economies of trust between two people, becomes more critical right now than ever before, than any other crisis. You have to be able to work and know what the other side is doing and believe in the outcome.
Thank you. So we're going to get things started. So good afternoon and welcome everyone to Coresight Conversations. I'm your host, Deborah Weinswig, and I'm very honored to have as our guest Jason Craw, who's an executive director at Lee & Fung and has been a colleague of mine for years. Today, we're going to discuss how COVID-19 is affecting the retail supply chain, how retailers have changed and adapted from week one of the crisis to now, and how and when retailers should begin thinking about planning for the future. As always, we'll have a transcript and video available on our site within 24 hours, and we will launch poll questions after, let's call it after 5 minutes into the call. And then lastly, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen during our conversation if you would like to ask a question. With that, I'll turn it over to Jason just to tell us a little bit more about himself.
I've been doing this 28 years. I've been with Lee & Fung since 2012. I sold my organization FRC to them in sort of a goal of globalizing and being partners on another scale. I'm 8 years into my Lee & Fung relationship and having the best time of my life with these people, breaking new barriers and exploring new horizons. So I'm based in New York. And we're working in all different areas of supply chain and pretty much touch every piece of it, from concept, product, finance, analytics, every piece of it. And so the needs of being fluid are critical now more than ever. But Lee & Fung has certainly gave me a great platform to do it in.
And have you seen, you talked about, Jason, a lot of these different areas that Lee & Fung works in and that you yourself work in. Are you seeing clients are asking you to do more? Is it more broad? Is it more deep? And what do you think happens with this outsourcing economy?
Well, in the short term, we've seen a lot of our clients, retailers and brands, furlough a lot of employees. So there's a lot less hands to do the work that's needed. And there's still a lot of work going on to deliver the next season, fall and holiday, which will be new product that is out there now. And so we've seen people in the immediate short term rely on us to take over a lot of functions that they were doing themselves. It could be color approvals, fit approvals, TD, design roles. How do we help people speed things up? Speed in decision making, or bring down risk is a big area. So that's been the short term. In the long term, we're seeing that the world is looking at this sort of outsource economy as the new normal. If you're a retailer, you need to focus on retailing. And if you're a brand, you need to focus on what you do best, but you can't do everything. And you're gonna have to, there's a finite amount of money and time, and you're gonna have to invest it where you get the best return rate. And so we see that there's gonna be a lot of outsourcing in general into the future in a lot of different areas. And we play in a couple of big pieces of them in the supply chain. One of the biggest areas we've seen is the move from traditional design to 3D design, or digital platforming, digital supply chain and decision making. It's about speed, and it's about getting the right information as quick as possible, especially in today's environment.
So Jason, during SARS, I was a Wall Street analyst at the time, and we started to see a complete change in terms of how people design product and how retailers, vendors, supply chain, how everyone interacted. But it felt like there was a snap back, and I was actually quite surprised, but there's a snap back to kind of, the normal way of working, within 12 months. How do you think this time is different?
Well, we've been on this path of digitalizing our whole industry for 4 or 5 years now. This is not a new trend. It's just when you have this pain point right now, it's speeding things up at a 10x pace that you get to where you need to go in a lot quicker short amount of time. And so it's not new. So in the past, there wasn't a wholesale change of the industry. We've already been on that path of a change. And so embracing digital ways of working has been happening for 3, 4 years. Some companies quicker than others, but everybody has some degree of it. But it's going to be the new normal. You're going to have to be able to work quicker. If you think about speed, our greatest currency in decision making today is speed. If you can make a better decision quicker, you're that much better off than you would be in the past. And if you look at the sort of consumer product sort of timeline, you might have a third of your timeline in the actual production of your product and 2/3 of your timeline in the pre-development. And that could be sort of designing, milestones, iteration, decision, next meeting. And by the time you actually get to that decision, you still have your same period of time to produce it. We want to compress that decision-making time by 70 or 80%. And by having digital assets, it enables you to do that with accuracy, with reliability, and ability to react on it to influence your business. Right now, when things come out of this sort of brief pause we've been in while we're all going through stay orders, when this thing ends and we come back and we think about the back half of the year, there's going to be a lot of people that have to jump on buying products and making decisions very quickly to get things in production because things have been frozen for a period of time now. So the only way to make those decisions is to really embrace 3D and using the digital platforms.
So if we see this significant reduction in terms of time, the speed is the new currency, aren't there several positives that come out of this, right? Sustainability, because we make less product that people don't want, right? As trends continue to change, at a new pace. How does that really, not only for 2020, which is a very unique year, but how does this change things longer term?
Well, we've been moving that direction. We have to take waste out of the supply chain in general, waste out of our businesses, waste out of everything we're doing, and invest that money where it needs to go. So productivity and focus has been key. This environment now is just ramping up, and it's going to fast track from here. We think that this environment today has fast tracked us, but it's forever going to be changing how we go to market. And you're going to see the rest of the world continue to fast pace the adoption of these technologies to kind of to get a competitive advantage, to reduce costs, to make better decisions. It's kind of repetitive, but it really does do all these things. Deborah, you're muted.
I know that you've been talking to, thank you, a lot of clients about 3D design and virtual showrooms and changing the way that they work. What helps them kind of get over that hurdle now, right? What's the, what kind of gets them to the other side? And do you think these are long-term changes? And do they have the talent internally to address these changes?
Well, that's another reason why there's a lot of outsourcing, is that a lot of the talent may not be trained up on 3D everywhere you look around the world. So they will be. People are investing in it. People are training. People are going to need high caliber, skilled people to help them in the short term. But digital showroom enables you to showcase products without being there. You don't have to get on the plane and travel there. You don't have to be in their office. And you can make decisions at a very efficient way by embracing this. A lot of brands have been using 3D showrooms for years. This is not necessarily new. We have many on our customer base that have been doing it for 3 and 4 years. It's been moving that way. It's really enhancing the amount of information we have because you can see things quicker. You can see more variety. And that's another point. When you're going through a period of uncertainty, you kind of sometimes don't know the right products to put in the store. So we're seeing people say, okay, how do we get more variety for more people's needs? As people in the world, as unemployment goes up, how are we going to have products that people want and demand now? So you have to design more products. And if you design more products, you have to have more variety of those products. So the one thing that people think is that variety sometimes means cheap or cheaper. It means better value. And that's a real key point, is how do we have better value products for people, not just cheaper products.
So if we kind of stay with that thread, what does that mean for this holiday where there's a lot of angst and concern? And, I'm sure you are and we are getting tons of questions in terms of, when should we think about reordering and how should we think about ordering for holiday? Can you walk us through that thread?
Well, what people assumed they were going to be buying 2 months ago is very much going to be changed today. And so when people reevaluate what they're going to bring in and how much of it, they're going to have to sort of change their philosophies. So they're going to have to be designing new products. They're going to have to be jumping on flexible supply chains. They're going to need a very diverse supply chain to actually make it happen in a short amount of time, which is one of the things that we do really well by being truly global in so many markets that, if there's going to be a continuation of a trade war, which you don't know, and then you need flexibility to make it somewhere else. So now this comes back to decision-making speed. The quicker you can get to the right information to make the best decisions enables you to actually then have more time to get that product made and into the market. So that kind of comes back to, you don't have time to make things in a traditional sense, and you need to embrace digital even more so than ever.
So Jason, you and I together have talked about innovation as, kind of across all different ideas over time, and anything from, 3D printing to computer vision, to 3D design. What are you seeing in terms of retailers thinking about innovation, this design thinking, are they at, like, is the pace changing now where we sit today, and how do you think that impacts them, for the future, where I think you and I both agree things have been a bit slower than we would have expected?
Well, yeah, because we started our path into this world like 40+ years ago, and we really felt the world would have ramped up even quicker than it has been. But we're really at that point now where everyone has dabbled with it. A lot of people are using it exclusively. The others who don't are now moving towards it, and we're seeing a lot of demand from people that were maybe not our clients in the past, asking us to help them out with 3D, help them digitalize, help them reduce overheads and outsource. And so there is a new normal to all of this, and this is just fast tracking what was already happening. And sometimes we need an event to steer things in a different direction. This is a terrible event affecting the world, but also long term will definitely force and promote our entire world of being more digital, which was already happening anyways.
In my own personal path on kind of 3D design and working with some of the schools like FIT and Parsons, one of the challenges we found is just there's not enough kind of 3D designers. And, kind of to take traditional pattern makers and to turn them into 3D designers was kind of a non-starter. So how are you getting the talent? How are you finding the talent? And, is that the competitive edge that Lee and Fung has?
It very much is. Our CEO made a focused investment 3+ years ago to say that we're really going to take a stand in 3D, plus digital platforms in general, but leading the way into 3D and starting to train the design teams and the TD teams on the basis of how to work in this environment. So we've built ourselves a center of excellence in Asia, which is a very deep, probably by far the biggest volume ability of anyone out there to handle 3D, where we can handle thousands of styles a week. Most teams around the entire organization are trained in 3D, designing in 3D. There's no more 2D work in a lot of our business models. And it's really kind of transformed how we do everything. You can see your pattern in 24 hours on an actual one-for-one garment, less than 24 hours. You can make decisions on exactly how it will look in production. We could fit it in 3D. We're doing that across many of our business units and dozens of our customers. So the entire process can be turned virtual, and it already is. But We've been training for years to do it. We're now training everybody that comes into the group in the design area to have to be able to work within that environment, because 3D is touching every business unit of our universe.
So if we kind of just look at the timeline that we're on, how have retailers, kind of changed and adapted from week one of the crisis? And let's end there, and then I have a follow-on question to that.
So in the very beginning, it was a what's going on here? Let's wait and see. Let's see what we have to do. And then there was the sort of panic that kind of came into the space. But that's sort of normal in a crisis, right? What's going on? Panic, and then practical thinking generally comes back into things thereafter.
So we've had like the panic phase, right? And then there's kind of the realization of where we are, and then maybe the recovery. How do you think about kind of different phases or different buckets? And, just even as you think about your own business, and since you've had the fortunate, kind of look to China, how do you kind of think that we'll all get through this together?
So we've been staying really close with our customers. We've been seeing what we can do to help where they need outsource help or us to take over certain roles. We've been very much aggressive to be lending a helping hand and being there to help the process. How can we speed things up for people, give people flexibility, change products by using, a lot of customers have asked us to change the products we're producing and redesign based upon maybe getting a little more diverse than they were before, adding more products into the mix, giving more options into products. So it's been about being flexible and using all our tools to support the customers that are out there.
So we have the results of the poll, and I would love to get your feedback. So on the second question, what percentage of your designs are being done with 3D design technology? Over 55% have said 0. Is that what you would have expected, and is that what you're seeing from, in general?
It's the reality. A lot of companies who say they're involved in 3D, they get a couple images in 3D, but they haven't really embraced it to where they're building product in 3D. As a division of Li and Fung, the division that I lead is just one of many divisions, and we're all working this way. We design everything in 3D from the bottom up, from the high-end customer to the moderate to the value. So 3D is part of our DNA, and it is so across the vast majority of Li and Fung. But we've also started earlier. We realized that we have to speed up the process, and this is how we're going to do it. We have to take sampling out of the system. To make a sample for somebody can take 3 weeks or two weeks to 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on availability of the fabric. So if we can take something that took 1 month and bring it down to 1 day, and if we want to do fittings of products that would take 1 month and bring it down to 1 day, we can take 2 months to 2 or 3 or 4 days. And to have that much time in your pocket is something that is absolutely critical. Now, different spaces of retail and brands have embraced this at different levels. But 3D has touched mostly everybody that we deal with. But you can go back and look at Nikes and Adidas's of the world who were working in 3D well before 5 years ago. So it's not necessarily new. It's actually not. But the pace of adaptation and how we're using it is being ramped up exponentially.
Is there any benefit to those who are early, right? Is there a first mover advantage, or how do you think about, right, if somebody were to adopt it now, what does that mean for their teams, for their supply chain, and how does that, and also too, on the other end, how are the factories, kind of working in terms of accepting these digital designs?
Well, there's a learning curve. So in the very beginning, when you're learning to use it, it is quite slow. But as you build up capabilities and skills and use and time, you get very quick and proficient at it, just like anything. So there's no time other than the present. 3D is really important. It really has to be part of how people think about building a business. And if you think about it also another way, sorry to kind of split the topic a little bit. Some of the most expensive investments we make in product development is in designers and product development directors, technical design directors. These people are experienced, they have a very deep skill, and they're some of the higher salaries that we have in our industry. But when you can leverage digital assets and do it in 3D, and you can fit in 3D, and you can do all these things to speed things up, it enables us to make the investments we need to make in the right places, or elevate the quality of the people we have, because we can invest more because we don't need as many here, and we can put the people where we need them. The focal points of our business is continuously changing as we digitalize. And the supply chain of the future has many changes that are kind of affecting us. It's not just 3D. And so our core mission at Lee and Fung is to help customers through the digitalization of the supply chain as we kind of lead into the future. And it's our core focus. And it's going to be a little different for everybody, but the easiest thing to jump into right away would be 3D. It is out there, and it's at every level of retail and branding.
Great. Well, we have a lot of questions already in the queue. And for those of you on the line, if you have any additional questions, please just enter them to the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and I will ask Jason. So Jason, you discussed the digital showroom. How can you touch and feel the fabric? That to me is a challenge. Your thoughts, please.
So at a digital showroom, we would still provide a fabric hanger or a quality swatch of what the fabric is. So someone does kind of have to touch the fabric and know what it is. When we design for brands in 3D, we still send them the fabric hangers to approve. But other than that, everything else is completely digital. So the CADs will be digital, the fits are digital, the color multipliers are digital. But yeah, the swatch of fabric or the feel and touch it, that is something that has to happen. As we digitalize fabrics, we get all the features and textures of those fabrics. You can see, the weave, you can see textures, you can see furs and plush, but you still have to be able to touch as well.
Do you think there's a time where, the technology is at such a level that we won't need to send back and forth physical samples?
On a lot of product categories, you really don't. If you look at sort of like the pyramid of items that people run today, a third of all the products are kind of like basic items. Your core commodities, basic socks, basic underwear, basic t-shirts. These basics, the fabric is very well known exactly what it is. And when you specify what these items are, you know exactly what you're going to get. But then as you go further up, then everything else does need to have, you do need to see what it is. So in 3D, we send the fabric swatch for approval. We do everything else digital. But when we get to pre-production, we do send a physical garment to people to see the actual garment just before we cut it. And that's kind of the process we take. But the vast majority of the time that's burned is in the design phases as well as the fit phases. Those are where we crunch the timeline.
Okay. All right, another question from the audience. How important will data become to help deliver speed to market? And what kind of data would you leverage? Consumer preference data, competitive assortment, benchmarking, et cetera?
Oh, all of them. So we have to look at what we know from the past. We have to know about what we're learning. We have to learn about what we're touching, what we're seeing, what we're scraping. So one of our digital platform tools is something called the Trend Engine, where we're actively scraping many dozens of retailer websites every single day and brand websites to pull information in, looking at social media, image recognition of what people are talking about, what people are searching about. We're using every possible source of data to focus us into what is the right things to be designing into, to have the best information, to steer our decision making, to give us the absolute best knowledge behind us to be as spot on as possible. We don't have as much time for waste as the past, or guesswork, frankly, anymore.
All right, thank you. And then in terms of embracing digital, on what specific products, clothing, hard goods, home textiles, et cetera?
So we've been using it the most in our shoe business as well as apparel business. Apparel is the most diverse, but it's being used in our furniture business as well, and our beauty businesses. It's used pretty much everywhere that we touch in the supply chain, but apparel's been where we've had the biggest amount of use.
That makes a lot of sense. And what do you think? I mean, we've heard a lot of, for packaging, like beauty packaging, 3D design being a focus. What are you seeing from that front, like packaging in general?
Well, packaging is where we spend a lot of time and a lot of waste. It's how the customer sees the product first. So we sample and we make more small changes and even more changes. Especially when you get involved in beauty products, the packaging is really the feature of the product. So you've seen 3D really been used as a way to sort of speed up decision making and get more options and varieties and get to sort of exactly what people want to do quicker and not have to make samples of all of them because you just don't have the time or the resources anymore.
No, thanks. If you were to place an order into your supply chain, what is the current delivery you would be quoting out of? Vietnam, China, India, another country?
That's a big question. I need another webinar. So let's say a traditional supply chain in a lot of the world, from concept to iteration to decision making, placement, production, and shipment into the store. The entire cycle could be like anywhere from 42 to 50 weeks for a lot of the companies in the world. By using 3D, you can crunch that by half at least. And that's like an easy answer. But there's ways of crunching it to weeks, not just by half. And it's all about how much automation you use and how much trust you use. And as we digitalize the supply chain all the way through end to end, a lot of the pieces in our trust economy of having a great supplier and supply chain with you using digital, you can crush this down to a few weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We've seen that happen in the real speed markets. And you can see it happening in the big scale markets by dropping to 20 weeks when it was 50 weeks. So you can go as aggressive as you want to, provided you're willing to embrace all these tools. And we've been doing it.
This is a very long question. And
Oh,
facing with the threat of entering new strong competitors to the market in coming years, we as a big player in the e-retailing market in the Middle East need to build up the logistics system to make sure we maintain a strong position in the market. What would be your advice about main points we can concentrate on to have our barriers up in the following years from competitors to take over the market? What is the best competitive strategy for focusing on?
I'm not sure that's even a digital supply chain question. It's more of a logistics question. I don't really think I'm the person to answer that in the small amount of time we have right now. So I'll have to pass on that one.
All right, and actually it leads into the next question, which is, kind of, do you believe small to mid-sized retailers can keep up with large retailers in this digital supply chain? I think in a way that's, this is a smaller company is trying to figure out, right, in this sea of larger companies, can they embrace digital design and digital technology, and does that help them stand out? Or is small just, a challenge right now?
Absolutely. Actually, it can be easier to adapt in a smaller company than a larger company. It's hard to turn the aircraft carrier, and so for sure. I mean, that's how you compete. This gives a competitive advantage for every type of company to get to market quick, to have better information, be able to go quicker than your competitors. To be more right on what you're presenting. It provides many bites at the apple in terms of how medium or smaller sized companies can leverage these tools just as much as a bigger company can. Something that's really right is right for everybody. And how companies embrace it and apply it is going to be unique to each of their models and how they go to market. But it's totally a direction we're seeing across every space.
And what about for companies who are, are mainly online? Let's say, they started D2C and maybe they're starting to move, into the physical world. How does this whole, and we've been asked this question many times, right? How should they think about, adopting 3D design and virtual showrooms, and at what point kind of in their, if you will, in their lifespan, and especially the early stages of their life cycle, where does all that come into play?
It comes into overhead costs in a big way. Designers can be really expensive, and so as you're a growing company, the ability to put on exponential amount of additional design as your product mix gets wider and wider becomes really challenging to do. So using 3D, you can get more with less. You can also, with your same team, get more styles created. You can do more volume. You can do more with the people you already have. So using these tools is very much important for a company that's trying to cross a chasm, say, from just online to brick and mortar as well.
That's really, and someone asked, what kind of vendors and retailers currently have virtual showrooms?
We've seen it on the higher end brand side. We've seen many of the sort of more luxury brands and active sport brands all use digital showrooms already. We've seen a lot of the brands you see in department stores currently use them. I'm not going to go through a whole checklist of them, but I'd probably say within our own mix, we have 50 or 60 that use virtual showrooms already and expanding.
And then another question, can retailers use virtual showrooms to sell to customers, or is this mainly vendors selling to retailers? Or all?
It's all actually. It's a way to engage customers with less travel and more immediate collective ways of presenting product. And how do you make your products look more cohesive and more focused and tell a story to whoever it is you're trying to tell it to, and be able to do it without hopping on a plane to do it? It's more important than ever. So this exercise of the stay-at-home economy that we're in right now is going to forever change how we travel and the amount of travel and how we engage and how we work. And these are the tools we need to use to be even more proficient than the old ways of working.
Exactly. All right, we've got 2 more questions as of right now. So what are your thoughts on the digitalization of the supply chain and how it impacts, returns? Like, do people, are we finding, and I don't know how you would utilize, figure this out numerically, but do we see that product is more successful because maybe more eyes have been on it when it's designed digitally?
Not necessarily. I mean, just because it's the whole goal of designing something digitally that it looks exactly the same as the real thing. You can't tell them apart. And so when you see a digital product that's created and a real product that's been created, they look identical. That's the whole beauty of it. So is it going to do that? I don't know. I mean, I would say the goal of 3D is to be able to mirror the real thing, to do it more efficiently. And if one does not give you exponential growth from the other and the ability to have better products, it still comes down to knowing your customer, knowing what they want, knowing what value you're creating, and how do we use these tools to deliver that product based on the knowledge we have to that customer in a quicker, more efficient, cost-effective, speedier way.
See, you talk about this idea, Jason, about knowing your client and kind of knowing what it is that they would want. That seems to me right now, as we're moving to this outsourcing economy, especially in supply chain, that's incrementally important. Can you talk about that concept?
We got to be local. So the first thing is, if you're sitting in New York, it's difficult to design something for India, and vice versa. So by our whole focus of our organization is that we're local in every global market we work in. And so we have designers and product people and account managers local in every single country we're working in and where we're producing product for. So we really get to know the flavor locally of what's going on. So that local understanding of the market, the culture, the retail landscape, trend is critical in being able to offer additional resources to supplement what your clients are already doing. How can you bring more value and more options? How can you kind of engage them with a higher hit rate? The adoption rate is critical in these days. So, by really understanding things, it's paramount that you're spot on with what you're doing. And by being local and global,
Yeah.
design and work local, but scale global, so.
No, very helpful. All right, based on what you're seeing across your ecosystem, what are you anticipating will happen in the apparel market with regards to fall holiday 20 and spring 21? No disruption versus extensive disruption.
Well, nobody knows. So with not knowing how it's going to play out into the future and what's going to happen on the recovery from this event, you have to be prepared and be flexible and be nimble, and to have the sort of thought equity to be able to make decisions that are accurate and fast. And so it's about how do we reduce risk? How do we make the best decisions with what we know, and being able to be flexible to pivot around those decisions to get to the right product at the right time at the right value. And so since we don't know what the North Star is, what we're going towards, we're just going to have to realize we're going to meander our way there, but ones who can use these tools to be flexible, to give themselves more time, to reduce their risk by having better information, by having a little more lead time in your pocket, is going to help them be more spot on in this environment to whatever comes our way.
Okay. This is an interesting question. Would it be easier to adopt supply chain digitization with Chinese suppliers or suppliers from any particular country, and why?
We're using it in all countries. So we see about even amount of suppliers who have embraced digital on their side already. It's helping them reduce the amount of samples they have to produce. It's also helping suppliers speed up the fit process to get into production quicker. So that's time, that's productivity, that's really valuable to a factory group. So I think you have to look more also at CapEx spend and by countries. And so if people believe that they're going to have a long lifespan, then people invest in their businesses. And if people think they're on a precipice of something becoming difficult, they don't invest in their businesses. So right now we have to take cost out of our businesses to remain competitive everywhere. Doesn't matter where you are, if you sell widgets or if you sell bananas, you know. And so investing in these technologies is enabling factories to be more competitive on a global landscape, to overcome issues that may come their way if there's more trade wars, if there's no trade wars, if there's a country shutdown. So by having this sort of flexibility, it really gives suppliers in any country the ability to be more competitive and more advantageous. I don't think it's a China versus non-China focus.
Do you foresee brands and branding becoming more or less important as compared to perceived private label product value in the eyes of the consumer? Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. It comes down to value. And so sometimes people think less branded, more private label, but private label just means cheaper. The goal of private label is to make a product that's identical to the brand in quality, in use, in experience, to just have a better value behind it in terms of cost, but not a cheaper product or an inferior product. So kind of, I want to frame that up as part of the answer as well. But we're seeing in a value period where people are uncertain, that people are going to be gravitating a little bit more towards value options. So we're seeing creation of additional SKUs, additional options. How do we have more diversity throughout what we're putting in the stores? So I don't think it's going to mean less branded product. I just think it means diversity of offering. And I also don't think it means a wholesale change in the percentage of private label to branded. But you'll see more variety within the different price points and buckets that people sell to give people more options until we see what's going to happen on the recovery phase of this. So next year may be another discussion, you know, as we see how this plays out long term. But for right now, it's about variety.
That's interesting. I mean, if we think about it, you know, in a very simple way from private label in a grocery store, right, where everyone starts kind of at good, and you know, then they go to better. Sometimes they move to OPP, opening price point, and then sometimes they end up with best. And so what you see, right, is this significant kind of growth. And you know, in grocery, we're talking about 1/3 penetration of private label, and I think that that's growing very rapidly right now. There's no reason that we wouldn't see, you know, some of those same characteristics in apparel and footwear as well.
Yeah, agreed. Provided you're delivering the same quality and experience as the branded experience, you'll see an enhancement of private label. Absolutely. And so the key thing to remember is to stay away from downgrading of products, which is not the focus of most people's private labels. It's about delivering a great value with an equally as good product, if not better. And that has to be sort of the core focus of how you go about building, you know, private label product.
Exactly. All right. Apart from digitization speed, what would you say for upcoming supply chain trends? How about onshoring or nearshoring?
That's been a big trend the last few years. You've seen a lot of that. And when 3D printing was something that was being talked about in a big way, it was like onshore. But onshoring and nearshoring has been a topic that we've been focused on for years. And if we're producing product for the India retail market, then we should be making it in India, which we do a lot of the times. So, you know, getting products made close to home is a big area of our focus. Central America is key in the United States. North Africa, Turkey is really important for the EU market. And so that's already been baked into what we're doing. That's part of speed and how we can unlock value, but that only gets you so far. And so you still have to reduce the decision-making process, because the vast majority of the time burn is in the decision-making process, what we call pre-production versus production. You can speed up your supply chain and make it, you can reduce it by 2 weeks, but you can reduce it by 2 months if you can make better decisions quicker with right information from day one.
What other trends are you seeing in supply chain that we haven't yet discussed today? Very open-ended for you.
Yeah, that is a big one. The key is well, The difference in the supply chain we're seeing now is that there is a need for people to work throughout the entire supply chain. You can't just be a one-trick pony and do one thing. And you're going to have to be able to touch things from concept, design, sourcing, raw materials, finance, production, quality, analytics, logistics, and then repeat. It's that whole cycle. And so
Wash, rinse, repeat, yeah.
you got to do everything. It's the washing machine, and the flywheel has to keep turning. So supply chain has to be about partners who can touch every piece of it, and at the same time automate pieces of it and digitalize it. So we need to kind of ramp that up all the way through, but it's already happening. It's not something that we have to focus on. We've been at it the last 3-4 years and speeding things up and digitalizing all those pieces of the flywheel.
Yeah. All right, I think this is the last question. We shall see. What's your opinion about the future key impacts of current COVID-19 on supply chains if it continues for the next few months? What should we do to better respond in the limited time we have? That's a great question if that's how we end.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's all about trust and transparent communication. And everything at every level in our industry is going to be about trusting each other and having really good, honest communication of what's going on and how we're going to work together. And without trust and transparency, nothing is possible. So it's really important in this day, right now, that we take that to a higher level. We have to trust our partners and trust the people we're working with, and do whatever we can to help the clients all the way along with whatever they need in this difficult time.
So Jason, there's no more formal questions in the queue. I just wanted to give you a minute or two at the end to kind of sum up your thoughts and hopefully leave us with a silver lining.
Well, I've actually written down a couple key words that we've been talking about. And if you think about everything, it comes back to the same things. And outsourcing is going to be a big topic. Value creation, speed, the contractor model, investing in 3D with partners who can support it for you, being local but scaling global, and checking the checkers. We can't have this waste anymore in what we've been doing. Virtual showrooms, trust, right? These are the words that we kind of used numerous times throughout our talk. And so as we're embracing the unknown, and technology is also sometimes the unknown, you have a lot of positive outcomes because of it that you don't realize. And if you don't try, you'll never know. And this environment is forcing us all to try new things and embrace new things. And there's no better time than the present than to jump in and try new ways of doing business. You just never know. It may lead you to somewhere you never realized.
You really don't. And you also don't know in terms of what relationships will be built during this time and, how business models are going to change. So it's a very stressful time for many of us, but it's also a huge opportunity in terms of, recreating all of ourselves. So no, I think that what you said really resonated with me, this idea of the economies of trust and reaching out to your clients right now, I think is incredibly important. So
Yeah,
with that, we'll wrap up, and everyone will have the transcript, the video available on our website at Coresight.com under Digital Events Library, and we'll also have this on YouTube. So thank you, and I will put Jason's email here for all of you to reach him. And thank you again for everything. And Jason, can't thank you enough for all of your help today.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thanks.